What's up, metal and heavy music fans? So Cannibal Corpse's own CORPSEGRINDER Fisher has a solo album out this week, and it's a death metal album. Honestly, I could almost end the review there, but I know y'all would like to hear more thoughts than just that, and frankly, this album is good enough to warrant them. Better than I expected, honestly. The whole thing kicks in the door hard with the single Acid Bath, which also features Cannibal Corpse guitar player Eric Rutan. I'll admit that when I first heard this song, my initial thought was, so why is this not just a Cannibal Corpse album? Given just how similar it is to their most recent output. But you know what? On the flip side, this is a real ripper that could honestly be held up there with the full band's best tracks. So while we could sit here all day and speculate on CORPSEGRINDER's motives for doing this as his own thing, the quality of the final result is beyond reproach. This is then followed up by the continued brutality of Bottom Dweller and On Wings of Carnage, which further establishes the overall emphasis on groove that is absolutely dripping from every orifice of this album. Like, there is not a single song on here that won't get your head bobbing, if not leave you outright banging your head or even resorting to the classic hair helicopter. The latter track in particular oozes its way into your pores and straight to the brainstem with its slower, sludgy, driving HM2 distortion that calls back to Morbid Angel classic Where the Slime Live. But then things pick up again quickly with the raging All Souls Get Torn, which wastes no time breaking into blast beats alongside a very at the gates sounding guitar riff, before then taking an absolutely invigorating transition into a D-beat portion more reminiscent of something off of a later Carcass album. And just for good measure, there is also a fun little breakdown at the end that is sure to leave the audience battered and bruised just to their liking.
Thank you, sir. May I have another?
And this is just the beginning of my favorite 3-song run on the album, moving very quickly into Death is the Only Key and Crimson Proof. Speaking of audience participation, the former opens with the bloodthirsty snarl of "It's your funeral," which is also ripe for audience participation, and honestly, even just sitting and listening at my own home office desks makes me want to flip it the fuck over every time. This battle cry then giving way to another more methodical groove that is no less violent and intimidating despite its slower pace. Think Hatebreed on bath salts. And if that classic CORPSEGRINDER neck is the one that you've always dreamed of, just leave this one on repeat for a few hours. And as if that previous opening vocal call out wasn't enough, Crimson Proof immediately attempts to one-up it with "Bring on the bloodshed!" Between this and more infectious guitar hooks, you'll be lucky to survive this section to make it to the second half. And also, let me know down in the comments your favorite death metal vocal call out moment of all time. And by the way, if you would also like to hear a really fantastic progressive death metal album this week, you should definitely check out Damnum from Allegion. I'd even venture to say it's among their best. Now, sometimes death metal albums this consistent in tone start to lose my attention around this point, but with tracks all clocking in at just around 3 minutes for a total runtime of only 32 minutes, CORPSEGRINDER doesn't even give you the opportunity to get bored. He knows what type of album he's making, so he wisely keeps it highly focused, throwing every possible ounce of fat to the dogs. So by the time we get to Devourer of Souls, I'm still all in. This one also sports a really great atmosphere that is worth comparing to the likes of Immolation in parts. It's a bit more melodic and stripped back, but still with a similar vibe of being surrounded by ever-approaching flames. More great scream-along lyrics for the chorus on this one too. Now, if I had to cut a track from the album, I would probably go with Defined by Your Demise, as this one feels a bit more cookie-cutter in comparison, but even so, it still gets my head moving, and there is a fun little solo in there as well. But then we close out strong with the 1-2 punch of Master of the Longest Nights and Vaguely Human. The former is another more atmospheric atmospheric, malevolent sounding track in a similar vein to Devourer of Souls, feeling very much like the summoning of dark creatures here to bring the end of times. And then the latter is a 2-minute meat grinder cracking out those skank beats one last time for an absolute hailstorm of unbridled aggression, one broken up only briefly by further apocalyptic sounding melodeath moments. Seriously, by the time this thing is over after that one, you'll just want to spin it all over again. I think I listened to it at least 4 times consecutively on my first run. And even though I'm sure I'll be far from the only reviewer saying this, if you love Cannibal Corpse already, there's virtually no reason you won't enjoy this release, as all of the same hallmarks are on display. Turning to my scales, I give Corpsegrinder a 10 for enjoyability. Thanks to all of the catchy grooves contained within an extremely tight runtime, I have an absolute blast listening to this thing. Not a second is truly wasted on anything short of pure entertainment. I give it an 8 for musicianship. While definitely fun, it's not anything particularly complex or technically noteworthy in any way. And that's not a complaint either, as I get exactly what I needed from this project, but from a more objective standpoint, it's worth noting in terms of final grade. And I give it a 7 for innovation. Similar to that last note, you're not going to find anything here you haven't already heard from the death metal genre already in the last several decades. So an 8.3 and a rock solid B for Corpsegrinder's new self-titled album. Y'all, if you enjoyed this, be sure to check out my Cannibal Corpse tier list for my thoughts on every single album, but that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.